hear everything we're saying. So, hello, everybody. We're going to be live in your picture in here just a few seconds. So, I'm with the legend, Mark Russell. Uh,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
going to be, we're
yeah.
going to
It's
be,
dining room.
that's him in the background you hear. He's, uh, he's talking to our other guest.
Uh,
Okay, we had 5 seconds. We're going live here. Here we go. And ta-da! Hello, everybody. So, from Mexico, I am very pleased to introduce you to Mark Russell. I had heard about you years ago and seen some clips from the Scott Walter show that he had put together on these amazing artifacts. And you were the guy that we think of as kind of like the expatriate, um, you know, OG dude that kind of has been there and the one to talk to that kind of knows everybody, knows the story, and has uh, just a really rich background in these really unbelievable, very controversial objects. And we're going to get into all kind of aspects of these, right? Why Mark and I spend time on these. I really did not want to be the guy talking about these, but in what has happened over the last few years, I realized these are some of the most important things that we can be looking at to understand some of our origins. And there are a lot of mysteries having to do with this. The more people that know about it, the more people that are looking at it, uh, the better it is. So, anyway, welcome, Mark.
well, thank you.
Now, Mark is actually going to be at Disclosure in Mackinaw, which is happening on August 31st, September 1st and 2nd. So if you come, you will get to meet him and talk to the man who's actually been out in the field and seen these things, discovered these things, talked to the locals, has the stories on it, knows what's real, knows what's fake, knows, who's full of it and who's not, right? And one of the people that I trust more than anybody when I'm dealing with this subject. And so I'm just so pleased to have you not only coming to Disclosure Mackinac, but here today to talk to our audience. And let me just launch off because we were doing a little bit of pre-show, and Mark was explaining the story of how he kind of was introduced to this, and it was had to do with the 2008 kind of economic crash, right? Why don't you pick up where you left off? Because I said, wait, we got to start this when we're on live because you ended up going from United States down to Mexico, and
Hmm.
you were
Right.
invited out. Actually, you were invited out, and when you talk about the place you were invited out to, I've got the image ready for us to show
Okay.
why it's called what it's called. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, back in the early 2000s, I was a project manager and estimator for a large commercial drywall company in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we worked all over New Mexico. In 2008, after the subprime interest market collapsed, we had probably a year and a half worth of work on the books, and then it was like turning off a faucet. There was no more work, and so a friend of mine um, invited me to come down and help mine purple opal, and so it sounded like an interesting thing to do, and I wasn't getting it. There were no jobs to really search out in the entire country. So I ended up going to central Mexico and helping him um, mine purple opal. And I wouldn't mine it. He had locals working for him. I was high grading now. I would put what they would buy into 40-kilo sacks. And so, anyway, one Sunday, I was in the Jardín in Abuelos, Jalisco, and this guy came up to me and told me, the aliens told me to take you to the temple. And so I thought, well, why not? I wasn't doing anything, and I didn't know the language, and so we just started going on hikes on the weekends. And he started trying to sell me these stones right away,
Well,
and
so since we have a visual of it, let's describe the temple.
the temples were like buried pyramids, and they had, like, it looked like entrances that had been buried. And there's other places like where I call Thos Hangout. There's one cave you can go down and you can dig in, and then there's another one up above it, and it looks like it's 20 feet deep, and it looks like somebody took a rock from the inside, a huge boulder, and slammed it over the end of the tunnel. And so you find a lot of these blocked off places. And so nobody's really had the confidence that there's something there to really do what it's necessary to get to it, to dig it all out. And then a lot of this stuff, you can't let the cartel know you're out there, and you can't let the police know you're out there. And a
Yeah,
lot
so
of
yeah, let me just jump in to say that because we're going to be talking about some things that are very exciting here, but don't do this, anybody, okay? Because it's not safe. Um, Mark's been there. I've been there. You can only be about so safe because if you're not from the area, or even if you are, um, you stick out, and hey, can you be ransomed? Can you be robbed? Can you be murdered? Like, you're in the middle of nowhere, and so what we're going to talk about is really exciting. But I'm just telling you, don't do this. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
and there are safe ways to do it.
Yeah.
You just don't go through Abuelos, and Aguas Caliente is very safe, and just to go for 45-minute drive, and then it's another. None of these sites are along the road. The close ones are an hour hike, where you got to hike up arroyos and up the mountain and down, and some of them are 4 hours of hiking. And the more that they dig out of there, and they clean out an area, then the further they have to hike. And so I've been on a lot of hikes, and we've dug a lot, and it's exciting. You'll never forget the first one you find, huh, Frank?
Yeah, well, actually, if we want to stop for a second, I got a video of the first time I
Yep.
found one
Yep.
with Anthony. Yeah, you've seen this. We can kind of let people experience it. And when I show you this, there's a couple things I keep forgetting to mention when I show this. Is one, that I had a remote viewer, my friend Vicky in Australia, trained by Tony Rodriguez, and that woman is incredible. The whole time she was telling me, I see a cube, I see a huge cube, I see a large square rock, I think it is, right? And at the point you'll see this, I'm crawling. I didn't realize that when I got out, I was under a huge cube rock, right? And this is a woman who's in Australia while I'm in Mexico. The other thing is that when you see me here, we've already cleaned. There was a bunch of brush and stuff growing under this, so it looks kind of clean. People said, "Oh, that's all stage," right? It's not. It was not. I will tell you, it's not stage. It's not. I have a hard time walking, and hauling my ass up this mountain was not easy. And we just kept getting readings. We could talk about this a little bit about this more later, but I'm pretty good with dowsing rods and a pendulum that kept telling us there was something there. And so the other thing is, like, when you're reaching under rocks or in holes, there have poisonous snakes, and you have to, be cognizant of reaching where you can't see. And I'm sure there probably are insects that wouldn't appreciate it either. But let me throw this up real quick. This is only a minute long. You'll hear Anthony and Michael on it who was witnessing it as we were doing this. So here we go.
Yeah, give me a stick too.
A stick? Stick.
I know these is.
Check out the snakes.
No way! Oh
Dude,
what?
okay, I just like pulled this out of this.
I know, I got it!
In the fucking middle of nowhere. It's beautiful.
All right, so I've got it cleaned up here. So I mean, it's exciting, right?
Oh yeah.
And what's actually exciting when I saw this one was that it's got several things that are embedded in it, which means if I wanted to, I could get thermoluminescence readings as well as carbon dating on it. Although when I see things that have had that done, it breaks my heart because they got to pry it out. Has to be done in that room, and it's like I don't need to do that. I pulled it out from under a rock. I know it's real, and and the other thing is like we were talking about this on the pre-show, but it's when you see enough of these, very few of them look like humans. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh yeah. And there's different species in different areas. It's like um, you go from one side of the hill, you come down to a fork in the arroyo, and you can go left or right. You go one way, and you find ones that are maybe 2,000 years old dating, other way 8,000 years, and they different areas vary thousands of years apart.
well, the that's something else too that I am privileged to. Trevor Grassi will invite me along, and I wouldn't quite know what I'm doing, but if he's doing it, I'll go, okay. So all of a sudden, I'm in the way south of you, almost to Guatemala, getting to Piedras Negras,
Okay.
and the ancient Mayan ruins all over there, and the person who was setting it up was Marco Vagato, who's a very well-respected researcher, and he had set up the entire thing. I mean, we had guys doing, setting up tents for us, and we slept on the beach outside the ruins because you have to go down the river. The motor got busted on the way, hitting a rock. I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere. And I'm running around bare feet in the jungle because I like to ground and do dowsing. But I mean, I could have screwed the whole thing up if I'd stepped on. I mean, there was army ants, there was red ants, there was snakes, there was scorpions, but I just kind of, I'm here. I'm not here to hurt anything. Just please, let me do my thing. But he was explaining about these stages. This is a very academic guy, right? Of Atlantis, because we all hear about Atlantis like it's a thing, like it's a one thing, it's a story, it's this thing. But he was talking about, that there was stages of it, cataclysms between them, okay? And so imagine right now we have elites. They're building bunkers. They're putting things way under the ground. The kind of cataclysms that some of the researchers are, like Randall Carlson is not considered, because there's letters behind his name, a geologist, but I would listen to what he has to say any day. The man is like, his mind's like a steel trap, and I've gone with him, and he's shown me evidence of like this whole canyon happened in 3 days, boom, like this, right? Well, these cataclysms are so disruptive that they're destroying everything. So in connection with these artifacts, I kept thinking, are they a tribute? Are they leaving a message? And there's so much encoded on them and written on every surface of them. It leads me to believe that they're trying to communicate something. Also, like a tribute, there's a lot of evidence that they're a tribute kind of a thing. But imagine we're going to have a big cataclysm. Somehow you know it. You've got the knowledge it's going to happen. And you don't want to have civilization start from scratch, and you want to leave information. So I went onto the machine and I go, hey, AI, like, what is the rock? What rock could I use if I want to put records there for the next thousands of years so humanity doesn't have to go start from scratch all over again, right? Or as researchers are reading, a lot of these are made out of what's called a polymer called aluminum silicate, right? Or would I use aluminum silicate? Which there's a whole story about that. But let's just go for a minute, like aluminum silicate. AI says, oh, aluminum silicate would be better than any rock you could find on Earth because it doesn't get affected by heat or cold. It doesn't allow moisture intrusion. Lichens can't grow on it. And you can do fine lines in it, right? And these are all characteristics of these things. And it holds a surface. And one of the things you'll see when you look online, somebody posts a finding or shows these, and they're beautiful. They're shiny, like, there's a shine and a surface to them. And people think it's something old has to be rough and pitted and whatever.
Right. And a lot of people thought they were polished.
Yeah, polished. So these have to be, in order to make this 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not something you think of as being some of the ages that are coming up. Now, the latest thing that we had dated from Tula was 17,500, but I've seen dates of 8,000, 12,500, and 22,500. And corroborating methods. It's not just like, everybody wants to say, oh, carbon dating, blah, blah. But, thermoluminescence and carbon dating, when they line up, that's data. And it's not just one time, right?
Right. It's that when the coincidences mathematically get too great to be a coincidence, then you have to look at a pattern.
And so, like, a lot of what I was getting, because I will argue with AI for hours, because it's going, well, but it can't be old because, because of the process, it's too high tech. I'm like, you're assuming, right? You're programmed by our little feeble minds. Okay, you got to let's open it up here. Like, let's say that maybe the mainstream doesn't have it all correct, right? Or maybe something's been suppressed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you've been, because I've been privileged to see, some of the things that have passed through you to, other collectors and people like that are studying them and scientists, and see some of the things that you've shown me. And it's, like you said, a huge variety of these things that are not looking like human. We've got cone head skulls. We've got the skulls going back. We've got I've seen, I'm sure you have too, like ethereal beings like coming out almost like a genie out of a bottle, and they show them like a picture, or there'll be and I always look at the number of fingers and toes, right?
Yeah.
And
But
then you would show me,
three digits are very old, like the trolls and the Irish. What were they? Leprechauns. They had 3 digits. They were really, really old civilizations. And then there was 4, and then there was 5. And a lot of these stones will show you how important that 5 is. You'll see a lot of stones with a footprint and 5 toes. Or a handprint with 5 toes or 5 fingers. Or a whole carved hand.
Now, the other thing too is that we see a lot of. I know I've talked to you about this, and a lot of the pieces that I've seen have a split down the middle of the head.
Oh.
This eye will be different than this eye. This side of the mouth will be different than this. There might be a different texture to the skin on one side. There might be scales or something like that. And we pretty much think they're communicating a hybrid, right?
And it's a lot of those are birth-death stones too. During life and after life.
Interesting.
You know, like one side is the flesh and the other side's the skull. A lot of them, not all of them. You know, a lot of them are like, you know, they're split with different themes and topics, and thousands of years of artists, you know, have reinforced this history. And what I've found is the different areas, they show different aliens on the stone, but they all have a common central theme. You know, they've got the birth stone, which it is the Aslan god with her legs spread and an alien coming out of the birth canal. You know, that's in every civilization. And screen face, I call him screen face, but they're the beings that came here to build the matrix. You know, they had to wear suits, but you know, environmental suits.
So
And
so when you with the environmental suit, okay, because there was an artifact that was in the last discovery I was a part of in Tula, and we thought the head was broke, and it looked like a Toltec, you know, piece, and it was actually a like a helmet, and it came off, and underneath it was a alien-looking like round-headed guy. That the head glows, you know, when you look at it. So I'm wondering, you know, let me. I have to move the video over from my phone, but I'll show it to you in a second. But go ahead and finish what you were saying.
okay, where was I? I always got into your story and lost my.
We were just talking about the you know, we started with like saying that, you know, the two halves could be life and death, and then
Okay. And a lot of the masks are that way too. You've got both the carved heads that have that. And then like there's these typical mask face. It's like almost like a triangle shaped alien face. And it's a lot of times a straight face, and then other times it's split with, you know, I call them birth and death, you know, because it looked kind of like a skeleton on the other side. But a lot of this is up to the eyes of the interpreter. You know, everybody interprets them different. And like when I've been around people and I have a table of these stones on display, somebody will pick it up and say, I've seen that symbol in my dreams. You know, or they'll make a connection with the graphics on the stones. And it's something that everybody needs to see right now. There are many, many stones that have an entire story, and I've got a collection of books that are like stone pages with, you know, writing both sides and with graphics and writing and glyphs and murals.
so let me just mention right there, like you were talking about, some people come up to a table and say something, and that's why at this conference, Disclosure in Mackinaw, August 31st, September 1st and 2nd, we are going to have a lot of these objects on display, and we want to know if you see something in them. We're going to have a camera running. You know, if you get an impression, there are things that all the time, you know, once somebody says, you go, oh, that makes sense, right? So I just wanted to jump in to make that point, because you have a similar experience with this, where somebody will kind of come out of nowhere and say something, and they'll go, oh, that kind of makes sense, right? Just like today when you were talking about the birth death thing. Now, I hadn't heard that before. I was thinking, because they were some of them are very different. The tooth and
Some of them are very different. Yeah.
yeah.
That may be, you know, intermarriage too. And you see some little statues with like a cone head facing one. Oh, there's your guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to show, this is the, okay, let's show that this was on top of it, right? And in the cave of artifacts, this was sitting on top of everything like up in the corner, and then that head piece was loose, and we thought it was broken, and then of course, as we said, it came off, and then underneath it was this, which under a UV light glowed, and this is one of the kind of more conehead ones. In this same cave was a actual crystal conehead skull that was probably weighs 50 pounds out of like a rose kind of quartz. But you were kind of describing this, and I thought I need to bring it up because I've got it kind of handy here. But was this is similar to what you were talking about?
Yeah. I mean, even down there in Tula, where you were, they've got Atlantean warriors. And to me, they look like that's an environmental suit. You know, they're too square and blocky to be, you know, like that guy. He's pretty square and blocky.
Yep. And then maybe like the face was just so it didn't frighten the timid humans, you know?
Well, and there's a lot of theories about that because Quetzalcoatl was recorded as being white skinned with the beard.
So
And
making me think of something else. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
okay, and you know, we're back down at Tula because Quetzalcoatl had, and I don't pronounce his name right, but there's a lot of history that refers to him down there. And that's where he supposedly left and said that he would return. And so,
You know, we found a lot of feathered serpent things there. I'm
Yep.
not sure, you know, but in Tula, I was it 2 or 3 digs now. We've and there's a similar. It looks to be different than this polymer. It's like a clay, and it glows very green. But it's not just a serpent. It'll have like in the back be 2 heads of a serpent, and then in the back will be a cat, could be a jaguar, could be a puma, something, right? And then there's one that was like a snake coiled up, but it had feathers, and then in the mouth was like an alien head.
and they're different here in Abuelos. You know, they're more of the aliens, like the aliens you see in the comic books. You know, that's what's really funny is a lot of this stuff that started coming out in movies. You know, when I first started going to conferences and talking about this, people said, "No, you just made those in your garage. You know, those look like you copied the cartoons and the movies."
I was researching for this, and this is what I found online too. People are saying that's their way of debunking, rather than saying, well, maybe the collective consciousness was picking this up. Maybe it's part of the memories that we're pulling down from space memory. Now that we're starting to understand that our memory is not in our head, right? So that's something I wanted to talk about. That's great.
And there are people that are connected to secret societies that have knowledge the general public doesn't. And they can't just come out and say, hey, you know, we're inhabited by other species and there's aliens that live here. They can't do that. And so they've got to make a movie and they have to inject it as a seed or something, you know, into the collective consciousness.
You know, hold your thought there because I just want to mention our mutual friend, Scott Walter. I don't know if you've heard this, and I just sent him a message today saying, Scott, you have so many interesting things to talk about. Please direct me because I don't want to give information out or get people excited about something that you're not currently, wanting to talk about. But one of the things, the last time I don't know whether I was talking to him directly or was listening to something, but they have just recently, no, I was talking to him. They've recently decoded some Templar documents that talk about not human beings, right? And so Now, I don't know how high up in the organization Scott is, but this seems to be new to him, this information.
He's working. Do you know who Tim Hogan is?
Yeah, yes, Tim and I go back, yeah.
Okay. So Tim Hogan and him have been doing a lot of the Templar releases. In one of the interviews with Tim Hogan, he was talking about South America. And he was talking about Atlan was Atlantis. And so, he didn't say Aslan, he was calling it Atlan. And so, I started thinking about it, and Aslan could be what we refer to as Atlantis. Because that's where the Mayan creation myth, where we come from, is Aslan.
So the other thing that's interesting here is okay, so I have a book. Actually, I should put the graphic up for my book. But one of the things that I researched in that was how we don't really belong here. We are not really our joints aren't really made for this gravity. Our skin's not made for the sun. We have so many genetic defects. We have literally. I don't have a good metaphor for this, but I mean every other animal on Earth that they've checked has 6 to 12 genetic defects. We have 6,000, which is not a natural thing. That is.
No, that's.
Yeah, the chances of that being natural. This is like one thing I did look up for a metaphor. For that to be natural, it would be the same probability as a jet airplane blowing up in the air, falling to Earth, reassembling perfectly and running better than it did in the first place. That would be, that's how impossible that is, right? So it is possible, right? But yeah. So my point of that is, we get these things that corroborating scientific evidence shows us dates that are pre-cataclysmic, pre-Younger Dryas. I mean, there's still people that are teaching this gradualist theory that don't acknowledge a great flood or a great cataclysm, right? But like I said, I hang out with Randall Carlson. I'm pretty much on his, train of thought that there were some massive cataclysms, right? I mean, just the Doggerland, there was undersea landslide so powerful that the tsunami sunk all the land between Europe and Great Britain. And we know that, right? That was not gradual. So these huge cataclysms occurred. And so and actually one of my best friends is a climatologist. And the debate now is like, what caused it? Not that it happened. Was it a solar, there had to be a bunch of energy in order to trigger it. And it were the comets exploding? Was it the solar expulsion? That's kind of the big debate. The Robert Schoch is solar expulsion. Graham Hancock is meteors. And those guys are considered fringe. But I'm talking like a very materialist physicist, worked for JPL, and they're all agreeing on this. So we had at least that one huge cataclysm that occurred. Now. So that line would have been Younger Dryas, 12,000 years, and these artifacts are falling like, there was 8,000, which would have been after, but there's 12,500, 22,500, 17,000, and like we were saying, like very little of it looks human when we're looking at these. So
Humans, I don't believe, were around at that time.
And then we find, I've seen a lot of these. I'm sure. Let me get back big here on the thing. I know you've seen this, but when you see this on an artifact,
and quite a few stones actually.
And actually, Marco Vagato said to me that in these writings and things he studied, that there was a break-off civilization from this Atlantis or whatever we would call it, and they were very dark. They were doing dark ceremonies. They were doing sacrifices. They were merging animals and humans for sexual reasons, like really crazy, kinky stuff. And these are very conservative guy, so have him telling me what, anyway. So when I see these strands of, these depictions of DNA on these ancient objects, it seems to be telling us a story, right? Like they were messing around.
Well, just like the super soldier program myths and things, they've been messing around. The Nazis were supposedly doing it before World War II and all through.
But you're going to be meeting my friend Drago Reed, who he's done thousands of
Okay.
PhD sessions, right? And then also, well, Jean Charles Moyen has actually. I have to get back to that wonderful guy. He's like, he really wanted to come to this conference, but he just had a conflict, and we might be able to work out something virtual. But he has, along with Tony Rodriguez, these stories about the secret program and time travel and all this stuff took a big hit with Corey Good. And I know the human animal well enough to know what happened there. I really think that everything he was saying was true because it ties to these other people that didn't know him, that are now giving evidence. Like Tony's got drawings he made decades ago, and he went and found the location where he was taken as a child, and everything, like pretty much you could overlay the drawing with where he was at, right? And Jean Charles Moyen was on a beach in front of his parents as a 5-year-old and vanished. And then, like, what would you do? Your child vanishes into thin air. They panicked. They went looking for him, and then an hour later he appeared in the same place, but he was not the same. He had been through a whole lifetime, right? And through his life, his parents were not. They were very empathetic, and they kept track of things. They kept his drawings. They took videotapes. They have a lot of records, and he's been recovering them. And you get something like a old videotape from 30 years ago. It takes some technology to get stuff off of it. I mean, it can fall apart, it can get moldy, and all kinds of things. But he's recovered some incredible stuff, and so you're going to be rubbing elbows at this conference with some of these guys that through several different ways are bringing us evidence of these secret programs that have been. Well, I think one of the reasons we don't have the disclosure that we all are wanting is because there's a lot of bad behavior, and they don't really want to. They don't really want to admit to it, right?
Yeah, well, it's gatekeepers.
Well, because I mean, you pay a lot of taxes, and then you got these people doing this monkey business that basically is, it's like I paid my taxes so you could do this to, So this is from the last dig in Tula,
Okay.
and this is a feathered serpent. It wraps around this, and this is I think it was a surprising material. I think it ended up being quartz crystal or whatever, and it did glow. But this is one of the variety of them. But it's so interesting, this snake thing. I just came back from Cambodia. Snakes everywhere there, like multi-headed snakes, and just temple. Every 200 feet, there's another temple. And I mean, we bombed the crap out of that country during the Vietnam War and just destroyed so much stuff. But there's still a lot remaining there. And their technology is getting, just like everything else, when they use LiDAR, they're finding things under the things that are even more ancient, right? And a lot of water and a lot of crazy hydrology and engineering. And some of these sites, you're in the middle of the jungle and the jungle's eating it up. And you can see where there was water around the temples doing some kind of thing. And I'm wondering, that area, do you know much about this? Like, if we talk about pre-Younger Dryas, what the climate was like there, because one of the criticisms I've seen, actually, we have a mutual friend, and his images get stolen all the time. And he was posting a recent find, and it was under a rock face, right? And people were going, "Oh, look at that dirt! It's so loose and powdery. That's just fake. That was all put there." And I'm like, "Okay." I looked up and researched it, and it's like, no, if you have a rock face, let's say maybe it used to be a cave, right? And you put objects in there 10, 20,000 years ago, the dust blows in there, the dirt blows in there. It's not going to compact the way it would normally on a normal surface. So when you're digging it out, it's not as, it's a different consistency, which is at this dig in Tula, it's like an artificial cave was built, and it's something that we are going to work on getting analysis of, because it looks like a white powdery concrete with stones, because we would have been killed. I'll actually, let me see if I think I've got an image of the cave. I've shown it before in a couple other podcasts. I haven't loaded it here yet, but I'll bring it up. But, and actually I just heard from them today that some of the places that we've carved out are starting to collapse. And so they were going to, asking if I mean, it's their land, but they're being very polite, because when they dig it up, it's one thing. But when we come in with scientists with us and we're documenting everything and we're taking samples, it's another thing. And you cannot get regular archaeologists to take this seriously. They don't even want their name associated with it.
No, I've tried, and it's like they are so weirded out by it, is what they act like. They don't want anything to do with it. The gatekeepers will come down on them, and they can do a lot of things. They have access to software that can drain your bank account. They can change your accounts. They can cancel you.
So we're like, okay, so let me just get back to my book, because we're talking about they, right? Everybody goes, who's they? And I have a whole chapter on they, because this is one of the things that people bring up, and they act like they have a gotcha, and that we're being conspiracy theorists or whatever. But there's such a history now that it's undeniable that there's ongoing repression that's happened. Now, along with that, it's like nothing simple, it seems like, right? JP, who we're doing a live stream tomorrow. He's one of there used to be 10, now they're down to 5 people that were allowed to give disclosure from in the military. But even within the military, the factions don't agree. And he wore a helmet to protect himself for maybe a decade. And I was at the conference when he finally took his mask off, and I'm like, you don't have to do this. It's okay if you wear the mask, because I mean, he's got like a family and everything. But it seems like the tide is turning a bit. These factions seem to be.
They're losing it by what Scott Walter is allowed to bring out, what Tim Hogan is bringing out. They're bringing out decades of hidden Templar history that they've hidden from the Roman Catholic Church and specifically the Vatican.
So I can't remember whether it was Tim or Scott telling me this, that, okay, like these Dan Brown movies that Tom Hanks was in, what is they called, the Da Vinci Code, or was that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
We got we got these Vatican agents, and they're doing this, and we got these. Well, that shit's real. Okay, so it was. I'm pretty sure it was Tim talking about. Istanbul is. If you've ever been to Istanbul, it's a huge city. It's massive in the waterway, and when you fly into it, you see like why that this was a major place was Constantinople, and then anyway, they had an artifact that the Templars had hidden away there, and it was in a diorite box. Diorite, very, very hard, like 8 or 9 on the Mohs scale, diamonds 10, right?
It's around 9-ish, yeah.
Yeah, so it's buried under the ground. I think jade's up there too. Jade's like up there, like close to a diamond. One of the skulls we found in Tula was like a jade or a jadeite, and we'll talk about that later. That one, like, I don't want anywhere near me. But anyway, so in this place, whenever they have something like this that they're hiding, and it ended up being in the middle of a city because the city grows up around it, right? They had protectors to kind of just keeping an eye out, right? That they might be the guy who's like, selling newspapers, but they're watching stuff. So they're hearing a vibration sound, and they put the word, however they do it, the Templars, they come in and start looking around, like, what's going on, right? They find a hotel room that has a tunnel dug in out of it, and it's the Vatican trying to get into their diorite box, and they're down there trying to into it, and they caught them, right? So this is between the Templars and the Vatican's trying to steal stuff from them, right? And then Scott has just revealed that they've got a green bottle that had a scroll in it that has Yeshua's, handwriting on it that talks about that he was only half human, right?
Yep.
So which actually makes so much sense, and these guys have been protecting these things in these art. They have John the Baptist's jawbone. They've got other bones from the ossuary and that looks like it was his family. There are genetic descendants of Yeshua. I don't say Jesus because I don't like to say Hail Zeus, but so there are genetic descendants of his. And so there's a lot of people thinking that, the big genetic 23andMe and stuff was a way to find, the bloodlines. There's some people that think that they want to get rid of that bloodline. The bloodlines become a big deal when you talk about these, Templars and the Freemasons and, and speaking of the blood, like JP just was telling me about his father. He said his father and then his grandfather, JP's the kind of guy that when the military takes him into these ancient places, stuff like lights up and starts working, right? And so from his family heritage, they're used to like these things happening. Like he'll get a feeling going back and there will be a craft out there and a being will come out and, interact with him or something. And this was kind of a common thing with his family and his bloodline. So there's something genetic in there, and he's a very JP and Emery Smith. Something in common I noticed that when the military picks these guys out, like they know what they're doing. They're very intuitive people. Like this conference is happening. Disclosure in Mackinaw.
Yep.
The reason it happened was because JP saw the future, and I thought he misunderstood me, right? Because I was telling him, listen, you had a being come down in a craft and give you a pine cone. I got some handbags. I got one here. I'm like, dude, like all over the earth, there's these, things with a handbag and a pine cone. I said, we got to get you together, and I was thinking just me and him go out and do this, right? And so the next thing I know, he was on some podcast live and he's talking about, yeah, we're going to go, this dude in Michigan, we're going to do a camp. And he basically described the whole conference, which then I'm like, okay, I guess we could do that. So then I started asking like my partners, my brothers, and I expect everybody like down the line, I keep expecting people to say no, right? And then my brother's going, well, we could get buses and then we could get we could rent a tent and we could do a thing and we could get catering and we could, and then, and then I, asked my other friends like you and Emery, and Trevor, and they're all like, oh yeah, I could do that. I'm like, everybody said yes, right? Because I'm thinking it's impossible to do a conference in 3 months, right? But we're doing it, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like these are like I just had Anthony just sent me an image today of another one that was found. Issa's bringing one that I'd seen in Tula that was more kind of a classic kind of Anunnaki, kind of a squat little bag, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And they just found one about a week ago that I'm having them, somebody I know bring to me that is from that same area, right? And let's see, we're going to be, we've got some comments here. Let me give, Lloyd Pye, like that book in the 1980s, I think I read that book. That's what blew my mind. Let's see.
I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, wow. Here's somebody else who was gifted a tiny pine cone 3 weeks ago before they knew about the conference. Well, listen, bring it because we got more handbags, right? I'm going to let JP pick one. You can pick one, and not that we need it. I mean, JP has, made things happen with like 1,000. I've done it with 3 people, but because I didn't have 1,000 people, but I'm not just saying it has to be JP or I. Anybody can do this. Like my friend that's the musician just started going out and giving intention, and after a couple nights, he didn't see it, but all his neighbors told him they saw a plasma ball fly over the lake, and it was different neighbors telling him that they'd all seen it, right? So these things tie together, Mark, don't you think? Like there's
Oh,
something
yeah.
about this, right?
Well, and the mind is much more powerful, and we've heard that our entire life. Use more of your brain. That you only use 5, 10% or whatever they used to say, or I don't know where it is now, but that supposedly the studies they've done is our brain's not turned on. They've dumbed us down in a lot of ways as a species through your genetics that you're talking about, the faults. And I found that crystals can jumpstart some of those um, strings they cut.
So okay, crystals, right? So okay, we're the one that Nassim grew, but I also, and that's what I use when I'm in the field. But he's got one that will just make current now. It makes just it's small, right? But it does it. And Dan Willis, who just passed away, unfortunately, had a Nordic being give him a technology of using a crystal and wrapping it with copper and silver. And the papers are all online. You can do this yourself. And I witnessed it working, just it making a current, right? And they said that everything they do runs on that. But okay, this leads to another point though. Just 2 days ago, I was chatting with Trevor Hawk about these objects and the properties of aluminum silicate. And I'm thinking, silicate, sand. What's sand? Quartz crystals, right? You're melting it. And then I'm on with the machine going, hey, if I have my process of making this aluminum silicate, when I distill it down, into a new substance, alumina and silica and aluminum silicate, can I make it crystalline? And it was like, oh, yes. And you can have a lot of agency over what you do with it, right? You could tune this stuff. You could imprint stuff. You can do things with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, we both know somebody that won't be named here who's quite famous who sleeps with one, right? And for years now, because I checked with his girlfriend, does he still sleep with that? And yes, he does, right? And I just wrote a book that I'm not smart enough to have written that when I got my hands on a couple of these artifacts, I said, you guys can tell me things if you want to, and things started happening. Like lights would do things. My watch started typing messages to me. And then this whole idea of restructuring human knowledge just kind of poofed into my head. And then it took me a couple of years to get it out and make it into something that could be described for a patent in a book and everything else. But I think that we're actually looking at a technology here. I
Yeah.
think it's symbology and technology, right?
Crystal technology and a lot of legends about crystals in Atlantis. They were healing, and they used frequency and crystals for a lot of things. So
And I think it's a really powerful energy, and I think that it's like anything else. If it wasn't used properly or done in a balanced way, or the more powerful the god, it could make things unstable in a way that because when Dr. Lydia de Leon and Arturo Ponce de Leon are friends of mine, and they wrote The Power of Sacred Location, a book about a scientific examination of temples on the earth, where they're located geologically, as well as their materials and their structure and their sacred geometry and everything else, and also the hydrology, the radiology, the geology, everything underneath them. Also, the populations around them and the characteristics. Like everybody over here gets depressed and commits suicide, and everybody over here is really creative, and then, now we're getting all of these new instruments. Well, in the 70s, I tell everybody I'm like way older than I look, right? I was doing Carillion photography stuff when we were doing with film, and you'd have a leaf and you'd show these energy patterns, and you'd cut half the leaf off, take it away, and it would still show the part that was missing. And now we've got visualization technology to show what some people have always been able to see as the auras or the energy patterns. And I can tell you that Emery Smith, you don't understand this from watching him on Cosmic Disclosure, but that guy is not a normal human. like he can he sees auras, he sees energies, and it's not a joke. And JP is very similar. It's interesting, both these guys in the military, the way the military use them, and how sensitive they are, and how much they go by their gut. For the rest of us, we're so programmed into being in our head and not being in our gut that like they make leaps that most of us wouldn't make by how they feel. There was a night about 2 months ago, and it was we were all meeting after a conference in Sedona. I was just there to see it, and they were all speaking, right? And so we're sitting at the table, and then JP's like, "You guys feel that?" Yeah, and it was a weird feeling. It was almost like I thought maybe my blood sugar was low or something, right? And he's like, "No, it's a time slip." He goes, "Can you check the news? You see something just happened?" And so we're checking the news and stuff, and it was just this really odd feeling the whole night. And it was interesting to be around him and Emery to watch them process this kind of like energetic feeling that was, because I probably would have just thought, maybe I need a nap, right? So, because I could feel it, but I didn't process it the same way. But it's also like you're talking about. I spent a lot of time in my book researching scientific proofs of the power of consciousness, because there are huge proofs, and it also goes back in writings as far as you can go. As a man thinketh, so is he. But recently we've got books like The Secret, which actually I think are more of a deception, because yes, you can control your thoughts and manifest, but it's the field around you of everybody else that's also being controlled. And so what as we become aware how powerful our thoughts and consciousness is, then we can take agency back and not be controlled by what they're telling us. We don't have enough of this. We have too much pollution. We have to, die, early. We have to be sick. We have to pay money to live, all that stuff. So I think you are, I think you came from probably just being like a normal guy, right? To all of a sudden you're in the middle of this weird world where you're seeing these artifacts come out of the ground, and then you have scientists and you have researchers, coming to you, and then you watch the drama of these people fighting with each other over it, and all of the what's amazing to me is when I have a video that Anthony took, or I'm with Sean Bond and Yisa and Trevor Grassi and Inez Urdada and researchers, and we're starting a hole, and we get down to the end of it, and we find 5 crystal skulls buried under a 300-year-old foundation that would have made it really impossible for somebody just to bury these things, right? And then the way they're all ritually put, and then we do get a dating on it, and it's 17,000 years old. Seeing this with your own eyes, and then watching the way the rest of the world treats it as it's, that's so fake and blah 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 blah, and having the same experience with the Filippo Biondi work, right, where Trevor Grassi showed me William Brown's scans from the early 2000s, and then he showed me Filippo Biondi scans, and neither man had seen them. This was GPR, this was Filippo. Puts them over top, and they line up, and they're chambers nobody else knows about, right? And neither of these guys have seen their work, and this is years before it came out. So I knew that it was all valid, and then to watch as he's doing a press conference and everybody's calling him, all kinds of names and saying how fake it is and how he wants attention. And then I meet the guy, and the guy's like, he's like you. He's like Trevor. You guys are selfless. You are basically, you're doing your best to survive. I mean, the economy in Mexico is just very, very difficult. There's just not a lot where you can survive to live there. But and the the economy that has come up around these, like I actually have an example of a fake one of these, right? But I can look. I know you can too. You can look at a picture on eBay and go, "Oh, that's real. Oh, that's fake." Because you get a feel for them. I mean, do you agree with me about that? That you could just see a photo.
But you know what the final test is? Is to smell them.
Oh yeah.
They have a unique smell, and a fake doesn't.
So this smell is so interesting. We have to talk about this. How does something have that smell after these thousands of, and then after it's pulled out of the ground, like it will fade,
Yeah, fade, but you can,
But
you
it's like a smoky mesquite kind of like. How would you describe it?
it's real earthy, like not really dust, but not like a lot of rock. It's hard to explain, but I've always wanted to do soil samples from around the valley because a lot of these stones can be identified where they came from if you can get a soil sample to match. And, and a lot of this testing is just so expensive. And I've tried to enlist, I get the scientists interested, but they're like us. They don't have any money. They need, a grant or something to work on. And
So that's something that's important to bring up. Like if you're a scientist or an archaeologist or you're a researcher, you don't just have money. You're basically, you're there. You're in this because you have a passion for it.
and there's so many tests that you can do that don't cost a lot, but you get into a lot of these other tests, carbon dating and luminescence and some of the equipment for the spectrograph testing. And I mean, just the equipment is outrageous so that each test costs a lot. And
Well,
lately,
so when you go for money, right? That's where the gatekeeping comes in, because
exactly.
like just yesterday, God, how much can I say about this? There's a tape about a site that's very important that I've heard about for years, and it's it seems like whenever there's something really important or whatever, there's either a big conflict in the area or there's a gatekeeping that happens that is just infuriating. Like this is like a legal thing. Like
Mhm.
I was given it as kind of somebody's dead man switch, right? And so it's video from iPhone 6 era or whatever, and there was also another camera, and so I put it through AI to kind of clarify it and then make the voices clearer so I could see it. And this would be astounding. It would be amazing for the world to see. If I say much more about it, I can be sued into oblivion, right? It was under a order in Egypt for a national defense thing. I mean, they can murder you for it, basically. And there was no reason this had anything to do with national defense. It was basically like ancient stuff, which is probably a reason for national defense because this ancient stuff is very powerful, right? That's what we're not supposed to know. You weren't supposed to know that, anybody, okay? So I think what we got going on here, Mark, is that we are fighting a system that is set up to keep us from understanding who we are, where we came from, and who's controlling it. And it's not who we think it is. You know.
No, no, I don't think so either.
Now, so like, I'm interested in your story about because there's a point when you went from, you know, visiting this site and then seeing some of these things to going, what the hell's going on? And then you experienced some of the backlash and some of the things of the, it's fake and blah, 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 blah. Like, at what point did you go, wow, this stuff's real?
Well, it was kind of like an experience when I was leaving from helping my friend. After about 3 months, I was going back to the US. And I went back to the mine, and it was around Liaoba up in the mountains behind. And I was hiking up there, and I always had two eagles that came down, and they would sit in the palmas and kind of talk to me, when I was working there. So I think it was those two came and they wanted me to follow them or something. So I started following them up in the cliffs thinking, they're leading me to treasure. And I got up there and it was like underneath their nests and looked down on the ground and there were eagle feathers. So I picked up a handful of eagle feathers. I looked at my watch and I thought, I better get out of here or I'm going to be stuck in here after dark. It was late afternoon and I had enough light to get out. So I got down to the bottom of the valley where I was going to go up the other side to get to the car. And I looked up and there was like hundreds of eagles. And they were flying in a circle. Over, and it was like it just brought tears to my eyes, like they were telling me that I needed to come back.
That's paranormal. That is not a normal thing. Wow.
And there were two groups of eagles, one right over me and then one over the cliffs further on down. And they were both flying in a big circle. It was, I still get choked up thinking about it. And trying to take pictures, you can't take a picture of the whole sky. I didn't have a 360 camera at that time. So you just picture, 20 here, 20 there, 20, But to look at the whole thing was, So they told me I needed to come back. And so then when I came back, I started collecting the evidence and trying to take it to scientists to help, study what's going on here. And all the language was all dead ends. The writing on the stones is so old, there's nothing that translates it. I've been told, gone to some like Sanskrit experts, and they say it's pre-Sanskrit, and they say it's pre-Sumerian, it's So right now, I am working on a website and a project, the Aslan Artifact Project.
Yeah, so AslanArtifactsProject.com.
No, it's AslanArtifact.org.
So it's not plural.
Aslan Artifacts with an S.
Artifacts.org.
And it's up, but it isn't all functional. It's just, kind of there. But the end goal is to build a corpus. I'm using AI to pull symbols off and to build a symbol database that is cross-referenceable. You go look at a stone in the database and it'll tell you there's 47 characters on it. And then you can say what other stones have this character on it and it'll pull it up.
So let me just mention what Mark is talking about here is that you've seen, a few of these that have these, they're actually images, but there's actually a language that's on these that is like between the pieces that I've had access to, it's probably a couple thousand of those on them, and I know you've seen probably many more. And to get an image of each one of those and get them so you can maybe get some pattern matching software like AI to see, because
Yeah,
it's,
they call it in the database, they call it face matching. And it'll match, you know, you want to match an 80% the same, or a 90%, or if you want the same character, 100% or 95 for the style. Everybody's, you know, writing is a little bit different.
now I've heard it proposed, which could make sense, that none of them match and that they're basically algorithms, like mathematical kind of, and you know, some of the ancient languages actually did have a mathematical component to it that we've lost. Like Aramaic had that, Mayan had cosmology tied into it. So you know, it may end up, you know, we get a big database of these and they don't match, right? But then, you know, then we're one step further though, right?
That tells you something right there.
Yeah.
And they have to do with frequencies. And, you know, there's the stones have energy. You know, we go back to the table that's there and people are walking by, people that are very psychic will come up and go, "What is this?" You know, they're like, there's just energy radiating. And there really is. You know, people pick up the stone and they'll just sit there and hold it. And you can look at it that it's talking to them or it's triggering frequencies or whatever. But they do have energy.
Well,
And that's the other thing, that your pendulum and your dowsing rods can pick up on the energy.
yeah, because when you're out in the middle of nowhere and your pendulum's going underneath this picky bush with these thorns all over it, and the hot sun is coming down, and you gotta tell everybody, "Hey, stop! We want to dig up this picky bush." You know, it takes a little bit of confidence, right? And then you pick, you know, actually, and I have a video, but actually, this is from under the picky bush. Actually, we're digging, and I'm like, it still says it's here, and I'm not seeing it, you know. And then one of the guys said, "Señor," you know, he points between my legs, and this was sitting between my legs. It was like I didn't see it. And some of them are, you know, some of them are tiny. Let me show you. None of this is new to Mark. Just tell everybody this is for your benefit, okay?
Oh, yeah.
That's the size of a grain of rice, smaller than a grain of rice almost. Carving.
And if you look at them under a microscope, they have as much detail as the full size one.
So we are, you know, and we've got objects that are, you know, some around. They're like containers, but they've got, you know, like this kind of booga symbology, which there was a narrative going for a while that people thought maybe that these were temporal and they had been placed there in order to be found at a certain time. But then we have a mutual friend who had a father-in-law pass away, and in a cabinet that had been sitting for 40 years, when they opened it, was one that had this booga stuff on it, which it's something I have a friend bringing to me, that because I thought that was an important artifact, that, you know, it wasn't something recent, it was something from not that long ago. And when I had the opportunity, the honor of like encountering the boogosphere, which I don't care what anybody says, that thing's, you know, when you've got people across the city catching it on different cell phones flying through the air, and then when you got it in a laboratory and you're registering, you know, dating resin off of it that's 12,500 years old, like these artifacts are, has similar markings that are on a lot of these. I know, Mark, you must have seen that kind of booga stuff on a lot of these too, right?
Yeah, but only in the last 5 years, you know, only recently.
So that's interesting, because you only see it in the last 5 years. I got one that a mutual friend of ours had in his father-in-law's drawer that was sitting from 40 years ago. But it's like Mandela effect is weird. Like, you things change and then you go get the videotape out and it's changed on the videotape, right? It's like,
Well,
it's,
yeah, it's a lot of this can manifest too. Like there's somebody that wants the human race to find something, so they manifest these. That's a possibility too.
I'm
Because
not going to argue. I'm not arguing with that. Yeah.
I believe that we have as many friends as we have enemies. And going back to simplistically, I look at it as they are the dark side, and I try my best to stay on the light side. So it's always they, and it's a big group. You can't just lump in one cartel or one government. It's all of them.
Well, and it's not necessarily a physical form. Let me get a little esoteric for a moment here because I think this is important. It's just came up yesterday with somebody who was in another country, and there. 40 years ago, I learned how to do it's a version of remote viewing of seeing a person and their well-being. And when I went to see him, I just felt sick to my stomach, and I could tell he was being attacked. And we only see such a tiny amount of what's going on around us that there's stuff going on. Like if somebody walks into the room, sometimes you get a bad feeling or you get a good feeling. There could be attachments there are Billy Corgan, who's a famous, he's the singer of Smashing Pumpkins, has talked about a person he was having a relationship with that he watched shapeshift right in front of him. And, I had somebody drive here for 3 hours to come and tell me their story of this happening with them, with somebody. There is more to heaven and earth than we think there is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so your ability to understand that you're a powerful being and you uh, can protect yourself and you can if you um, if you're going to steal or be deceptive or evil or whatever, you're going to attract those entities and those attachments. It's a spiritual warfare, and so we need, if we want to not be a part of that or be fed on, because once you do that, you're attached. You're stuck to
Oh yeah.
these people that make these deals, these ceremonies, and they do it for fame and money and whatever. They're now a slave to that. It's not like they're giving up something that they can't get back, and but the rest of us, we need to be vigilant. We need to be clean with what we're thinking about. We don't need a shaman or a priest or a guru to help us. We are powerful. You just got to yourself understand that, and it's completely your own thoughts. If you think you're weak and vulnerable, you're weak and vulnerable. If you think you're powerful, you are powerful. So this just
And you have
yesterday,
to believe. It's not like I think I am. I think I can. No, you have to, believe.
and it's not faith. Faith is the wrong word. It's knowing. It's it, right?
Yeah.
So like I said, this just happened yesterday, and so I called a couple other people that are kind of on the same page with me, like, hey, so and so got an issue there, and I just felt the attacks, and he's probably not strong enough, and we all kind of helped out. And then I sent him a video going, here's what I want you to do. You need to be careful about this, and then he shared it with some other people that I heard from, which I probably would have done a better job of if I knew he was going to share it. But basically, it was just saying what we talked about. You have to know that you have the agency and you have the power. Everything that we've been told in our society and how we've been grown and all these voices that we're looking up to tell us what to do are telling us that we're weak and we have to listen to them.
Well, we're groomed to be a victim.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So let's tie this back to
Okay.
this story of mankind, which I was talking to Trevor Hawk about this, right? And I said, there gets to be a lot of people that kind of try to become the voice of this or the OG of this or whatever. And I really did not want to be the guy who's investigating or talking or having a conference or featuring these. But what's happened is I'm realizing that these are really important and that they are critical. And I am really tired of disinformation. I'm really tired of ego, and people trying to take credit for things that, I
Yeah.
mean, seriously, these are from thousands of years ago, from an intelligence we can't even think of. We don't even know if a human made them, right? And to try to act like you're an expert on it because we don't know. We can have data, and but to make I I'm not the I don't want to be the expert, like, because there's too many unknown, like, okay, somebody digs this out of the ground, and and then inside of it's this guy,
Will be, yeah.
and
Sometimes there's some that are in, there's 8 of them around, and the different sizes, and
they're
some of,
different, little different personalities on each one sometimes,
oh
right?
yeah, right. It's not like there's a carbon copy. There's different aliens, and they have different features.
And like you were talking about how they're different here to here. Like, okay, so I've been in Tula, then jumped on a plane and flew up to see you, and then gone up to Olejos, right? And then go out in the middle, and I swear there has to be millions of these things, millions, because if you think about the time spread, right? We're talking, if our corroborating dating method is, and I don't know how it could be wrong. We've got so many of examples of it. We'll keep dating them, right, and keep getting better data over those. Like, think how much work you can do in one human lifetime, which is very limited. And you're talking thousands of years, tens of thousands of years,
And,
right?
and before the internet, how would you get the knowledge to people when the newspapers were controlled, the TV news is controlled, everything is controlled? What their narrative is, and that they go out of their way to make you look like a conspiracy theorist. That he's just a conspiracy theorist, and there's nothing there. He's making them in his garage. Him and his friends got together. Well, now there's thousands of people with the same experiences that can get together, and with that interaction, build groups, and with the groups, enlist other interested people that are in search of some truth in this misinformation war that we're going through.
What happens is, it doesn't matter how little credential you have or how much backup you have. If there's enough noise that says, like this is was what was happening when I was researching for my book. It was 2 years, and it was kind of as AI was coming online, right? And so I didn't use AI as a source, but I would pit them against each other, and I would use them to critique or give me a list of things to check or things like that. But like, especially the Biondi protocol, it was like they were using Zahi Hawass as an example of why it wasn't valid. And I'm like, that dude, he doesn't even read his own book. He doesn't make his own discoveries. He shows up and does the press conference. I mean, Trevor Grossi's going to have a video in a couple of weeks that's going to expose something that was never seen because Zahi sent a kid in to look in a tunnel and he never went himself. And somehow somebody else went in there with a 360 camera and captured something that we're all going to learn about pretty soon, right? So we have these gatekeepers put in these positions, and we've been so taught to get all our information from them. I think it's changing. I think COVID was overplayed hand, right? I think when that happened, it really woke a lot of people up.
Well, and 10 years ago, we could not get laboratory to work with us. If we told them what we wanted to date, they just flat out refused. In order to get them to do it, you had to tell them it was something like a dinosaur bone, or it comes from, you're studying this, and you put something that's plausible in that time frame, And so that's how we did our dating in the beginning. Now, Trevor, the reason he's missing the conference is because he's going to the University of Arizona and he's got a contract with some professors there that are going to do some more studies on these stones.
Well, at least
So-
he's got a good excuse.
And,
No, but
and
he's making himself available, though. I told Trevor.
he's making himself available from the University of Arizona.
Yeah, we're gonna do something probably August 1st through 7th, and then he asked if I needed some stuff for the conference, and I said, let me think this through because I think his input is critical. I mean, a lot of us can be amateurs, and we can send things out for lab dating, and we can buy a microscope online or something. But when some of these laboratory testing equipment things cost millions of dollars, and when you have access to these university laboratories, and you've got people that he just went to Paris and gave the closing presentation at that polymer conference, and these are the top guys from all over the world. And I think if I understood him correctly, he's actually found we got carbon dating, we have thermoluminescence, and I think we have ceramic magnetic, because some of these have a ceramic component. We also have a fourth way of dating them that he's found, because in some of these polymers he's been able to recover carbon embedded or something.
Okay, what it is in the mix of a polymer, they use plant material as a catalyst, and the carbon is helps it bind.
So this is definitely a polymer here,
Right.
and so
There's a very good chance that we can date it, and he'll just take a carbide drill and he'll drill a little hole to get enough material and label it. It can't go in plastic or anything with hydrocarbons, without saying, but put it in a tinfoil wrapper and you send it to the lab.
yeah. So
We've always been doing the dating with the glue, like around the eyes. You showed like it would be around the stones is like a glue. And all of the glues are test positive for protein, which means they have carbon and they will date.
I'm gonna put another light on here. Okay, because on the back of this we got a star pattern too.
Yep.
Now this one actually, and you can see it's in. Maybe you can't see in the camera, but see every. This is very typical. They've got things on every edge.
Oh yeah. Well, on the stone tablets, they write on the edge. They vary from 3/4 to 1.25 inches thick, and they write all the way around the edges. Anybody that's forging them isn't going to go to that much trouble.
I just realized, Mark, as I'm doing this, that this has 2 holes here. It's made to be worn like this. It's got 2 holes.
Exactly. I've seen those masks that would cover your whole chest, but they had 2 holes in them to wear maybe in a ceremony.
Yeah,
it was like,
might have one of those. Yeah. So imagine you've encoded these. They're crystalline. You maybe put some kind of energetic component to it, and you've got specific kind of ceremonies or things that you're trying to do, and or somebody that you're trying to heal, or maybe they're trying to evoke something or whatever. These are things. I'm going to grab another one because people seem to be liking these. Let me another one. I think something is missing from the middle of this one. This has got it's kind of a booga looking thing on the outside of it.
right,
I think something was in here that we don't have anymore, right?
right. And you'll find any of those that look like, yeah, exactly.
This is that. This is what Mark was talking about. This is the proto language that uh, it's not anything that has been identified yet, and the symbols when you see that enough of them, you spot them, but it's you don't like I physically haven't seen two of the same one, but I haven't really put a lot of. Yeah, I have the same idea as Mark. I'm like, okay, I got to do a spreadsheet and I got to get a picture and get each one lined up. But if you're heading the project up, I'm totally supportive. I will, give us a format and I'll, get images to you and we'll catalog these things.
Well, that's what we're working on, is to make the site available for the public, and then work out some kind of, paywall for researchers that want to have access to the data. And we're going to work on donations, hopefully, because testing is expensive, and post all the results of the testing, no matter what it says, because sometimes it's not what we expect. And we go, oh, then we got to go down this way. And
Well,
so,
Yeah, so that's one thing. People also they anybody in this area, you're making speeches, you're selling books. They're saying, oh, they're grifters, right? Listen, nobody's like throwing money at any of this,
no,
And in
I
order
mean,
to,
you aren't going to get rich on a book, believe me.
man, I tell you, I tried keeping the price of my book down, and then when I went to put it up, I was like, I'm going to lose money on this because Amazon wants 55% of a markup, right? And then,
Right.
and when you go overseas, it's even more. So,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm literally, in order to make it, I'm trying to keep it affordable. Well, it's
And they don't distribute it unless you go through them. You have to, they're a distributor that will get your product to the customers that will buy it. And
So
to
it's-
do that any other way, it's
and I made the mistake of making a 655 page book. So, that's expensive to manufacture. And,
Right.
But what I was trying to do was the things that we've had these experiences. I had a different one than you had. You kind of had an awakening of, seeing these and experiencing them and realizing that something wasn't quite fitting the narrative, right? And but there's a lot of people today that know that something's not quite right. And what happens is they just become overall distrust. Like in countries like Egypt's a good example. Nothing is so much corruption. The money never goes to what it's supposed to go to. So nobody follows the rules there. They don't stop at the stoplights. They don't park where they're supposed to. They don't, because they're like, screw it, And that's what ends up happening when you can't count on the integrity of anything. And that's what I'm concerned about. We're reaching a part in our society where the elites don't really care anymore. And they've made us so distrustful that we're distrusting each other when we don't realize that we're the strong part here. I mean, I would rather be in a foxhole with the maid who's changing my bed than I would with some elite, because, she's going to have I've met some of these people.
right.
They're arrogant. They're entitled. They think that they're better than you, and they've never really had to think for themselves other than to connive or keep their power system going. And
Well, and a lot of it comes back to bloodline. Bloodline puts their, into the right schools to get the right, connections, and then, but that path you have to sell your soul.
so,
And
like after traveling as much as I have, right, and I've been to a lot of different countries, seen their ancient stuff. There's always like this being, and he's over top, and there's a bunch of humans under there doing his thing or whatever. My saying now is, if your God has a name, he's not a God. He's some asshole who's using you, and he needs you, And if you don't give it, him what he wants, he's got nothing, right? And we've got factions now of these beings, these deities, these entities. Some of them are ethereal, some aren't, and some of them, can inhabit humans. I'm not speaking out of my bottom here. I've seen things talk
I've
to
had
people.
my experiences, yeah. And we're programmed to keep those to ourselves. You know, everybody's going to think we're crazy if you bring that up. You'll be shunned, and that's what we're taught.
So yeah, and what happens for me at this, because I've got a family business, I've got a lot of employees, and I just stopped last night. I was taking my bike on a ride and exercising my dog Charlie, stopped to talk to some of the employees, and they said hello, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll tell you some stuff, right? And so it's kind of hard because once I get going, I kind of got into like the story of the woman that came to see me the other day that had this entity appear that was making love to her. She could, saw it, and it's a uh, it's kind of a horrible story. And in fact, like when the more you learn about this, it's kind of very traumatic. I before there was Epstein Island, this has been going on a long time. I found out that right out there, 8 miles that way, they use that island, which is Mackinaw Island. I grew up here. I know the history of the whole place. I've got two screenplays I've worked on amazing stories. One's based on the Native American stories. I know that that island is very powerful. The natives consider it their most sacred place, and that's where these guys do this stuff. They pick these spots. And Catherine O'Brien's one of the ones that's a survivor that was talking about it, and I was like, anyway. And then when you hear what they will do, it's just psychopathic.
That's
It's
part of the Montauk Project.
well, okay. Well, that was the woman that came to see me a few days ago.
Uh,
Um, uh, Preston, Preston Nichols, the two of the guys that were well known that had kind of recovered, and they were recovering because they have a way to wipe the memory, but the memory comes back after about 11 years because your memory's not really here; it's out there.
yeah, it's fractured.
Yeah, and so they remembered when they were using the technology there, they were starting to mess with time, and they had pulled this baby from the future, and it was her, and she had no idea. They found her, told her what happened. Because she couldn't, she was like, what's going on? She was a baby brought here, and then she was getting pregnant and having the babies just disappear. Like, then there's no, miscarriage or anything, and the baby's just gone. And then this guy shows up in her life and goes away for a couple of days and comes back, and he's just slightly different. And at one point, his male part was doubled in size between a 5-day weekend. And she was like, is that normal? I'm like, okay, you know the answer to that. That's not normal, right? And
Yeah,
anyway,
no.
there was a whole traumatic thing that happened over that. And she hasn't told anybody for years. She like drove 3 hours to come and tell me this. And to have the person sit there, like I have read and had seen people on stage talk about it or books and things like that, but when you have the person tell you and look you in the eye and you feel the trauma of their experience, it weighs you feel it, and it's made me very passionate about getting this message out about we need to take our agency back, and because we're blind to this stuff doesn't mean that we can't figure it out and we can't take control back. And so anyway, part of that is bringing Mark here.
Part of that is learning our true history.
Yes, because this is one of the most important things we can do. It's been covered up, and we've got rocks here that are telling us a story that nobody wants us to learn. I mean, look at that. You were talking about trying to get results on things from a laboratory. I heard the same thing from another scientist, that there were certain countries they couldn't send things to because if it fell in a certain category, like the United States is not one of the places they couldn't send it to, because it fell within a certain category. They would just say, oh, it was indeterminable or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think Brian Forster's running into this as well when they're working on the Paracus skulls. And, because there's DNA surviving on these. The pair that I saw a video of the necropsy of, they were like this big, right? And had the hair on them still and the skin, and the brain cavity was 1.5 times what ours is, which you can't do. You look up anything to do with that, they say it's cranial restriction. It's like that's bullshit. There's just no way, and yet it exists across all of the mainstream literature you know. Emery carries a little 3D printed Atacama figure, you know, that little guy that they found. Now you got Gary Nolan, who is considered, like, he talks about ET experiences, yet he says, "Oh, that's a deformed baby. Did the DNA." And Emery is like the guy for the military who analyzed like stuff that was not human for 14 years, and he's going, "No, no, 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 no," you know, um, and he keeps it on his desk, you know, the 3D printed thing. So um, my point in that is, like, you got people that feel like they're on the team, but they're, you know, they're kind of steer you this way or steer you this way, you know. Um, I've got uh, a real motivation to say, you know, you don't listen to me, you know, don't listen to Mark, you know, look at all this stuff, think for yourself and figure it out yourself, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. And they'll be able to in Mackinaw.
Hey, Cameron. Cameron works with Emery. Yeah. So Cameron, like, like that from the beginning, just the vibe of that thing, like, I was like, okay, because Gary Nolan got my attention when he was talking about being visited. He's a physicist and all this stuff. But then when he just came out and was just very adamant about it being a deformed, you know, human infant, and I was like, okay, I don't trust you anymore. And then I didn't realize that Emery had also studied it, and he's got other data. And you know, let's just say I have a lot more trust in Emery Smith than I do now of Gary Nolan, and I have a lot of suspicion. And it also shows me how deeply um, where, you know, things are controlled. You know, it's like they give us somebody who looks like they're on our side, and then they feed us, you know, they go along with us and they feed us some disinformation. You know, so yeah, just
In general, they're called handlers, but you know, especially once you've crossed that side and they have blackmail or um, bribery on you.
well, I'm totally like lost now because I realize Cameron's watching. Commander Salamander, yeah, because he works with Emery every day, and I mean, I'm a little bit in touch with Emery, and I'm just still struck because the man's accomplishments. He's gonna be involved in this conference. Disclosure in Mackinaw, August 31st, 1st and 2nd, Mackinaw Mill Creek Camping, either virtually or in person, but he has a whole technology he's been working on that I am really anxious for him to unveil. Like, yes, he has incredible information from his work that he had done, you know, previously, in the dissections and all that stuff, right? And when you sit at a table with him and JP and listen to them talk about their experiences, it's like, I feel like I'm the luckiest boy in the world, right? But also, he's evolving. He's using what he has learned. I mean, he's the guy that actually created an energy device that worked, that now is turning it towards human health. And so that's the next thing. We've been turned down. We've had our telomeres capped to keep us from, you know, being healthy and aging healthy. And it's going to be people like him that are, you know, gonna set us free, right? And we can have a healthy, like, making us die in such a short period of time and then get old and feeble. It's another control mechanism, you know. It's anyway. So let's get back to you. I gotta go. I've got to get back because I've got Mark Russell here, who's like the guy. All right. So can you tell me a little bit about, you know, we were talking about the different personalities of these artifacts, right? And we're talking also about time spans that are really huge. So I was thinking, and somebody else had mentioned in the comments here, they said, you know, how many of them are. But when I see, when I'm in Tula, I jump on a plane and I fly, you know, a couple hours up to see, you know, Mark, right? That's a big space of distance. I'm in Tula, I'm finding artifacts. I'm up, Mark, I go to see Mark and I drive up to Oliejos, I'm finding artifacts. That's a big area, Mexico is a big country, so that's why I'm saying is like we got a span of a lot of years. We have a lot of different beings pictured. We have a very similar common substance here, this aluminum silicate, and now we have a new way of dating it as well. But that's an incredible amount of data that's being ignored, and now we've got citizen researchers, citizen scientists. I mean, Trevor Miller's got, he's an actual scientist, right? But you need backing and you need support and all of that stuff. But I think this is part of us coming into a new age of discovery. So let me just let you talk for a minute because I want you to talk about the differences that you have seen in these artifacts in different places and what you think, because you've mentioned a little bit to me about you think that from this area to this area you got different looking species. And I was just talking to Marco Vagato, who was talking about they were doing a lot of gene splicing, playing around, like in the writings he was seeing, right? And that feeds into like kind of what you were saying. It's like we've got all this variety of these not looking human things, right? And then we just talked about the anatomy.
Then there is a lot of, I call it pre-Egyptian, but who knows what pre-Egyptian is? Maybe it was Egyptian, Anyway, I have an extensive history of Anubis and quite a bit of Thoth. I've got some history of Ra when he was small, when he was growing up, because Ra, when he showed up in Egypt, he was retiring. And so, and I've got a lot of them with Isis. I've got a lot of ankhs and a handbag and stuff like that are Egyptian motif. And then you go, to the next hill, and you've got the Cerro de Toro stuff, the aliens with the, they're on beigeish white rocks or geopolymers. And I think they're different geopolymer mixes.
Like the kind of the whiter kind of ones like
There
that.
you go. There's a lot of that around Cerro de Toro. But Ovelos and Cerro de Toro is only the center of that valley. There's artifacts found all the way around the valley. That's where 5 states come together with Jalisco, Guanajuato, San Luis, Zacatecas, and Aguascalientes. And so you've got sites in each state, and they aren't that far in distance away. And you go to Chinampas, and you've got a lot of the Aztec calendar type stuff. And you go to Cerro de Espia, and some of the most detailed pieces that I've had come out of Espia. But each location have different aliens. And then on the other side of Cerro de Toro, they've got like these aliens that had long tube-like mouths, they had snouts. And then you've got others with, big, tall cone heads. And, there's so many variations. And then these little animals that you don't recognize that tend to, well, they're carved into the walls, like down in the pyramids in southern Mexico. They're like these little animals coming down the wall, and they're coming down from heaven. And then you get to Teotihuacan, and all of the feathered serpent. And so it's like, and Michoacan is different. They've got different types of aliens, grays and things like that. And they make big jade statues out of them, or big, geopolymer statues. And so they're right around Abuelos. There's 5 states, and the Chichimeca Indians were the last, I guess, civilization to inhabit the area before the Spaniards came, and both the homesteaders, and before that, the conquistadors. The Chichimeca Indians would take things home from other parts of the valley, and they'd make their own altars, and the things they valued that they found from other parts of the valley. So in a lot of senses, it got mixed up. It's primarily this type of artifact, but the Mayans brought the Tolteca stuff, and the civilizations that came afterwards found, the other earlier stones. And that's how they passed down history. And now, today, they've gotten into hiding the history. And you've got, entities like the Vatican that hoards a lot of this history and a lot of the technology. And they want to retain the power for themselves. And knowledge is power.
I also think it's energy harvesting too, when you've got these catacombs with millions of bones ritually stacked in geometric patterns, and they don't match up. Yeah. It's a power, it's a dark power. Um,
I believe so. They've used it for dark power. They've changed the light into dark. It's like we're looking at the truth in a mirror, so it's backwards.
yeah, inverted. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like changing the name of Yeshua to Hail Zeus, you know. I was going to bring up it's not loading for me. Let's see if it'll load. It was one that you were kind of referring to. Well, okay. It was basically one of the figures that,
Mhm.
yeah. The thing is, okay, if you're interested in these, we're going to have this is going to be quite a museum. It's only going to be up for a couple of hours. We'll have some ultraviolet light. It was actually Trevor Hawk that said that Bashir, the guy who channels, right?
Uh-huh.
Have you tried putting a UV light on these? Because nobody had thought of that before. And that's when, you know, one of the pieces that is made it to Laredo, that will hopefully make it to Mackinaw, is, when you take the light through it, it pulls it, carries it through. I know you've seen this, right?
Right.
But they, like the cave that in Tula had a head that was not a human, not an animal, and nothing in the cave glowed, but that head did, right, under the UV light. And, we wouldn't have known about it if it hadn't been something that, now is part of this research, is seeing, what glows,
Mm-hmm.
I think I have an image of that head here. Let me see if I loaded that up. No, I can. But anyway, all right. So that's fascinating, Mark, because if we're talking about these guys that had power of extremely advanced technology, they were playing with genetics. It makes sense that we got all these kind of like beings, right? That are, and there's remnants of them being found. We've got the long skulls, and we've got images in crystal stone and other things of like the cone head, and then a couple of the crystal skulls coming. Actually, I got to maybe bring this up. This is,
I'm like the mask.
you can see how big those skulls are. And these are a couple of the crystal tablets that are coming as well to Disclosure in Mackinaw. August 31st, September 1st and 2nd at Mackinaw Mill Creek Camping. Actually, if you just go on Google and type in Disclosure in Mackinaw, you can bring it right up. But these, you look at those, and like when you're carrying those out of a cave, they're heavy. I mean, they're
Oh, yeah.
and so you're in a cave, right? So you're trying to, and you're thinking like, what kind of a spine could support that? And I don't necessarily know if they were actual beings in our gravity, if they were ethereal or whatever. And also on these skulls, what's interesting is if you look at the overall shape of them, it's beautifully symmetrical. But the carving, it reminds me of in Egypt when they took something that was maybe pre-Old Kingdom and then they put Ramses II all over it, right? And Ramses II stuff looks crude compared to everything else. This carving doesn't really, it's beautiful, it's symmetrical, but it doesn't, like when you look at, and from this, I don't know if you'll see the angle on it, but the symmetry of these skulls is so perfect. It's almost machine computer-like, you know? Whereas these crystal tablets, they do look like they could have been, you know, carved by an artisan. And what's interesting about them is they're translucent. So depending on if you've got light on this side or this side, you've got the different images, you know? It's like, yeah. And then you know, you've got, up, I don't know, there's a being here is a winged being in the bottom right, and his skull is really long and it goes up. So you got the skulls that go back, you got the skulls that go up, you got the skulls that are cone head, you know. There's one that I held in my hand, the actual bone skull of a being that was small, that was about like this big, right? And it was on a like this polymer plate, and it had like Orion, and it had two other beings on it. One where the head went up, but the other one the head went back, where far back. And if you look at the back of this skull, there was two ports coming out the back, which must have been where the brain was. It must have been like a big sac or something that looks, you know, like on some of these images that's not there anymore, right? Because the eyes were so big, there was no room inside that skull for the brain. And you know, if I was so surprised when I was showing it, I was just like, my mind was blown. If I can make an arrangement to get like one tooth, you know, I'll get it to our pal Emery. We already had a little discussion about that. Because you know, he's a scientist. He starts asking me 75 questions, and I'm like, dude, I was like shocked. Like I had no idea. I was not ready. He was asking me measurements. I'm like, okay, here's how we do it. I said, see, that's my hand holding it, right? Okay, put your hand by my hand. His hand's like slightly bigger. I'm going, that's your measurement right there. That's all I got, you know. But that's what's going on like down there. I think because of the dry climate, some of this stuff has been preserved, you know, and you get it up in a cave, and you know the dust comes in, and it's not. I don't know whether it must not be extremely alkaline or extremely acid, you know, because this thing was well preserved. So, have you seen any actual other like things that weren't necessarily a fossil but were actually bone?
Yeah, I've got a couple of carved bones. I'm not sure what they are, but they have the same carvings, but they're bone.
Now, I saw one that was like an antler, and it had looked like cuneiform on it. You know, it was similar to that, but it wasn't. It like little line things like this, right? Yeah. So is that what you're saying? Is like you saw it was?
Well, no, I had the same aliens carved on it.
Oh, okay.
It was like, you know, a big bone, and it had carving on it.
You know, I think you're making me think here now, because you know the way they decoded Egyptian hieroglyphs was the Rosetta Stone, because it had several languages on it. And actually, that's kind of a misnomer, because there's another stone sitting in the Cairo Museum that is actually more important than the Rosetta Stone. For some reason, everybody talks about that rather than this other one. Mohammed Ibrahim told me about it. But in this case, we don't have a Rosetta Stone, because I think there was probably one language globally, and then after the cataclysm, there was probably the mighty human got a bit too mighty, and then they confounded our tongues and messed the languages up. So we couldn't get together and conspire against these guys that are running everything, right?
Not until we got internet again.
Yeah. So and he's like, that's it. I get into a car in Athens and I got Google Translate, and I'm going to be talking to my driver. Hey, hey, you ever heard of this? Hey, check this out. Yeah.
But that's what it was. They've always split and divided us so that we can't learn the truth, so that we can't share the.
Are from the beginning are conflicting too, right? You know. Yeah.
And
So
the way the human mind is designed, everyone makes decisions on their understanding of what happened. And if you talk to five people that see an accident, it's like they saw five different accidents. Each one saw a different detail.
this is exactly the subject of my book. It's and what happens is that becomes a part of their self-esteem and who they are. And if you question that, you're questioning. They become very angry or defensive, or it becomes something that they feel like they have to defend themselves against, right? So the
Right.
communication stops.
Right.
Anyway, well, okay, so I've kept you going for 2 hours, and I am so grateful for this, Mark. Thank you so much. And so you've been in the background so quiet. Introduce yourself.
I don't have much to say, but it's interesting to hear you. My English is not that good. Mark's been a good friend of mine, and he made me interested in this, which I'm not a believer, of anything. I mean, I do believe of energy, but so this is new to me, and I'm hoping there might be an answer for me why I feel such a stranger on earth. Maybe I come from there, and I just don't know. I need guidance. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's fun.
Well, we're going to meet you in Mackinaw. You're going to be coming here, so that'll be wonderful. We've got another person coming to Disclosure in Mackinaw, all the way from Mexico, and
Yep.
so we're going to be able to. You're going to make your own decision. Like, don't listen to what I say. Don't listen to what Mark says. You're doing the right thing. You're figuring it out for yourself. Yeah.
I need to shake hands with an alien, basically, to believe, But it's interesting anyway. I mean, I can't say this is a lie either, I don't know. But you're the experts. You got me along. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, but you know what? You're the expert. You need to get that feeling inside of you to know. You know what? That feels right to me. That makes sense to me. I think our biggest mistake is we outsource our opinions to other people and that we think know more. You know way more than you think you know.
Yeah, it's a feeling. I guess it's a feeling, And I felt something about just hearing you two guys talk. It's like, wow, this is a different world. I mean, it tells me a lot, but this is like two different perspectives.
And he plays with the stones. He does,
I mean, they're fun to look at, So
Well,
I studied Japanese, so I like, characters and all that, and I'm always going like, what's this guy saying? What's the story here? It's
see, now there's a perspective that you have that we don't have that would, and just the fact that you're friends with Mark. Mark is a wonderful person, right?
Oh, yeah.
That energy and the fact that you are friends, that's a really important thing. These are not coincidences, right? And the fact that you're a friend of his, the fact that you're going to be making this car trip to come to Mackinac and come to this conference, that's like not a coincidence. This is going to be something that is going to. It's either going to lead you to think of new things or answer questions or be able to give you a chance. There's going to be people here to talk to that are not the usual people that have been thinking for themselves. You're going to have opportunities to be able to ask experts in other fields and then make your own decision, right? And see a lot of new things. And like Trevor Grossi is going to be bringing some films that nobody's seen of really amazing stuff from Egypt. And I'm going to have a couple myself. I'm hoping to have at least more of a finished version of my film on Coral Castle, which was, it's just become, there's just so much there the more you dig into it. Just 2 weeks ago, I'm at a festival. I meet a relative of Edward Leedskalnin, and she tells me how to say his name properly, right? And I get a bunch more details there. It's one of these things that, I the universe is so weird. You'll the more you notice these coincidences and things, the more they happen. Let me just give you one quick example. So I'm with Trevor Grassi. We're in Pedras Negras. There's a cenotes, which is these big holes in the earth that go down. And it's the largest one on the earth. It's there near Pedras Negras. And he's always one for a tunnel or a hole. If he sees that, the underground and the underworld is really important to him, right? So this thing is so big, it's scary. And you can't just, like, with equipment, we could get down there, and but trees growing out of it and everything. So after that trip, I get home and I'm at the airport and I get an Uber. My Uber driver grew up in the jungle at Pedras Negras, had been to the bottom of that cenote, and had seen mammoth bones down there. Like, how weird is that? Like, what a coincidence out of everybody in the world on the trip on the way home, That's this thing. Like, this is how strange the universe is. Like, as you start noticing these synchronicities and you start asking these questions and you start looking, it starts coming to you. As long as you're open and and you keep asking the questions and you keep looking for the answers, it'll give them to you.
Yeah. I was actually happy to see that I understood basically everything you guys talked about. I was like, man, what kind of vocabulary they're gonna bring? Because I watched some of your videos and I'm like, man, numbers, chemistry, physics, man, I suck. But this is interesting. It's easy, and I'm looking forward to it. I think there's something going on. I mean, actually, seeing the world as it is, this may be a message to put us all together. I have no idea, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I've got two physicists coming to the conference, right? And I'm always after both of them. Well, one of them is like an intuitive physicist who's like, talks about stuff just spontaneously that hasn't even been invented yet. And the other one is an actual working physicist that's worked with Nassim in his laboratory, but works independently now. And she was on a dig with us. And so I'm after both of them to ground that science and bring it down to everyday level. Because when you start talking about quantum physics and time and decoding and all this stuff, people tend to think it's over their head. But all we need is the right metaphor, the right story to ground it, and you'll know what we're talking about, right? So my goal is that you will come to this conference and we'll be able to help you understand some of these things that maybe you think that, are over your head or too scientific or whatever, because they're not. It's just the way the universe works. And the more you understand about it, and you already understand a lot of it anyway. So all we just need to do is like give you a metaphor for it. Oh, it's like that. Oh, I got it, So yeah, anyway, so nice to meet you, and I hope you guys have a safe trip, because I'm still looking forward to being able to show you around my empire here.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
And he might get digging in Tula before we come up. We have to go to Tula.
Yeah, please do that for me, please.
Yes.
And then they'll have a different experience.
That's one thing
that you find you never forget.
I actually today asked my friends there to please take you to show you the area. Okay, so I mean, I don't know whether at least you'll see where these things are coming from. But in Tula, they've been even digging graves, finding things. Everything coming out of the ground. But I think it's like that in I mean, that whole area. I think if you put me out there with a dowsing rod, I'll show you where it's at.
Well, what I found, at least in Abuelos, is the people there have figured out that there's money in these things. And so they've gone out and they start looking and they learn how to find them. So I think more are coming out right now than ever before because of the economic depression that those people are in, and they can see that, there is a little relief if they can find stones on the side.
Well, they're desperate because, like, Anthony introduced me to a couple of people, and I'm getting things every day when they find stuff, and I'm like, Mark, yeah, Mark, no, I can't make Mark help me anymore with this stuff because whenever something happens, like
Yeah, it overwhelms you.
yeah,
You know that it you start saying, yeah, okay, I can handle this, and then it starts coming faster and faster and more people. And I was the only gringo in that valley, so they brought everything they wanted to sell to me.
and the thing is like I don't want to shame anybody that sells these artifacts because I think that they made millions of them because they're energetically for this time period to come out to tell us where we're from. I had a person that's very sensitive reading them, and he said they're here to tell us where we came from, right?
Right.
Although the ones that come to me, I feel like I'm a guardian for, and that I'm here to show them to other people, right? So, so when I say that, I have all respect for anybody that is out there that is educating people on them and getting them out to people, and the people in these villages that are so poor, they have got no other economic way to support themselves, and if they find these objects, the thing is like it's difficult because even getting them some of them are very fragile, they get bigger ones, and
Some of them weigh as much as you do. I mean, it's like, and to get those down the side of a mountain.
there's that. Okay, there's a couple examples of that. You'll see it. They're not as, they don't weigh that much, but pretty much. They're heavy, and there's a couple of these crystal tablets are really fragile. Calcite, and they've been there for tens of thousands of years. So you don't want them to be broken now because the DHL truck dropped them or something, right? And you can't get any kind of formal acknowledgement or protection for them because they're just oh, it has aliens on them, right? So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you. Look forward to seeing everybody at Disclosure Mackinaw. I want to introduce you to these gentlemen. Yes. All right.
Yes.
Anyway, take care.
Thanks.
Bye.